Yeah, nice. How you doing, everybody? This is the Dev Talk Show. It's Wednesday night, and we are live. Chris Gomez and myself are here. Chris is, I think, checking some audio and things like that. I'll give him a minute to catch up. But welcome to the show tonight. We are happy to be here on another Wednesday night with another exciting topic. And there's just always something cool to talk about in the developer world, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what moves faster than software development, right?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much nothing. You know, this might be awkward, but I'm looking across my room and I realize my door is open.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go and close my door.
That's
okay. If you don't. Yeah.
So, hey, what's up, everybody? If you're watching, it's on YouTube. This is recorded June 23rd, 2021. And we recorded 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So that's if you're watching in the future. You're watching on YouTube. Those of you watching on Twitch, thanks for being here live. And if you are watching us in the future, consider joining us on Twitch, because what we love is having a conversation with all of you right here live. You know, we can answer questions, or more importantly, we learn from the audience. Like that's my favorite part about the show. So
I agree.
Yeah. So tonight it's
there's no way we know everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
And Rich says the audio is low, by the way.
Audio.
Stream,
okay. Let me see if I can figure that out there.
It's way low, as a matter of fact. So I'll talk for a minute while Chris tries to figure that out. So, and he says it's just Chris. So sorry. And that's probably because my booming voice, you know, like I don't know. I'm no Bill Wolf, right? But for those of you that are local friends and know us, and interestingly, you don't see Rich on the screen here, but we're getting some chat from Rich in the background. Rich had some conflicts tonight. He might be joining us. I'm not sure, but nice to know that he's here with us at heart. Like he's probably got the show in the background while he's doing whatever it is he's doing, and maybe he'll join us. You know, it's always more fun when it's all three of us, and you know, we just have really great chats. And but again, as Chris was saying earlier, it's not even just the three of us, right? It's like the whole audience, the whole community, and you know, it's fun. And there's so many great streams and places to get content these days. You know, funny story, speaking of content, and great places to get content. You know, on YouTube, there's a lot of great channels. And of course, Tim Corey, friend of our show, has his channel, I Am Tim Corey, on YouTube.
Yep.
And I got this funny comment on my YouTube channel. And I should probably bring up the two YouTube channels and show them. But somebody stumbled across one of my videos and wrote in the comments that they thought that I was my image, my Swami, drawing of me, was ripping off. They thought I ripped off Tim Corey.
Yeah,
and
I see.
Did you? And they said, well, you know, this guy looks like Tim Corey, so he obviously just like pasted some glasses on top of Tim Corey's image of himself, and he's got a popular channel, right?
Sure.
200,000, viewers on his channel. So, so it was kind of funny.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy.
And so I wrote back saying, well, I'm not ripping off Tim Corey. A lot of us use the same artist, Reverend Geek.
That's what I was going to ask.
And a lot of people do, right? And I wrote at the end, I wrote back to him, and this is in my comments on YouTube. I wrote, I'm not ripping him off. I happen to be a lot better looking than Tim Corey. But I said, but he's a lot smarter than me, and I like his show a lot, and his YouTube channel is great, right? And I gave him the props there. I took a little shot at him and said he wasn't as, whatever. So then I actually sent that message over to Tim to let him know. I thought he'd find it humorous. And he goes, you know what you should have told him? He said, you should have told him that we're really the same person. It's like a Clark Kent thing. Like when I take my glasses off, I'm Tim Corey. When I put them on, I'm Swami, and so that was the funny thing that happened to me this week. I thought that it was pretty funny.
And I was going to ask you, isn't it because, this our friend, the same artist that I think is also a Microsoft MVP, right? That he had done both portraits. And I said, yeah, I could see them looking similar, but I think that's funny that, and isn't that the internet though, right? Because it's both a huge world on the internet and also a small world. Because here is this person saying like, man, don't you realize, I can't believe you ripped off this person. You probably don't even know who they are. And it's like, he's actually been on our show.
Right. Yeah. So, friends with the guy.
Yeah. We're not best buddies, he's awesome. Sure. He's come to Philly.net and he's amazing. And you should be watching him if you want to learn to program, right? He's amazing.
You should be. Right. As a matter of fact, if he was only talking about the image, right, at this point, right? But if the viewer, and I don't think the viewer meant anything bad, he even said at some point, maybe it's the same artist or something like that. But I could only be so pleased if he said my channel was ripping off Tim Corey. Like maybe my channel's that good that they think I'm trying to copy Tim Corey. Like that would be cool too, right? I would see that as a compliment.
Hey, you're like the content's that good.
And so, And by the way, Chops is here. Hey, Chops, how are you? Chops says, good evening, gentlemen.
Yeah, awesome.
And thanks for being here with us tonight. So anyway, that was my little anecdote for getting us started while Chris was doing some sound checks and things like that. But it was funny.
It is the hardest thing to sound check yourself. It is so difficult.
Well, with the delay, right?
Yeah.
What's our delay about right now? Like sometimes on Twitch, it can be between 2 seconds and like 20 seconds, which makes it really hard.
Let's see. I don't have a Twitch earbud in, but let's see.
Oh, you don't have it in.
No.
Usually what I can do is I'll touch my chin and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 seconds is actually pretty good. At least on my screen, I'm at about a 5-second delay, but it might be different for everyone else. And it makes it hard to do a really fluid chat. Sometimes it can be awkward when we're getting the chat 20 seconds after we say things or something like that. But maybe tonight it's not too bad, right?
Yeah. I think we're getting closer and closer to where this is almost like a turnkey startup podcast. The interesting thing is that all year round I adjust lighting because I would say, at least 90% of the year it is full evening by the time we start, and we are in those few weeks where like I had to lower a shade and then say, oh, it's still kind of awkward coming through that window, so how can I cover that? And that's only for the next couple weeks, and then it'll kind of be back to where it is. But here we are, longest days of the year. They only get shorter from now on, which is actually, this is my favorite part of the year, when the light extends really long, and it does especially here in the Northeast and Northeast US. But by the time we get to that point where I'm super excited about it, I go, yes, and they're already getting shorter again.
Yeah, we're pretty close to we're pretty close to the longest day right about now, within a week probably.
A couple days ago, maybe?
When it is.
Whenever summer started, yeah. All right, so what are we going to talk about?
Well, sorry, I'm laughing. So you see what Chops right?
I see that.
Chops says the current latency is 1.52 seconds, which means he gets Schwami faster than Schwami gets Schwami. And that is that's pretty funny. That is very funny. So yeah, tonight we were going to talk about .NET 6.
Yep.
.NET 6 preview is well, there's been a few .NET 6 previews, right? The most recent one just came out. And I don't know, I think it was maybe Chris or maybe Rich said, hey, why don't we talk about that? And we're like, okay, that seems like a good plan. There's also a new preview version of Visual Studio 2022, which is now out. And by the way, that's really hard to say. Have you noticed that? 2022, like I don't know. I think of saying 2020, and then I got to remember to add the. It just throws me off a little bit. 2022.
Visual Studio 2022
feels redundant.
Which may, who knows exactly when it might come out in 2022. I mean, it very well.
Well, I guess it will. Here's why I think it will. Now, again, this is just completely guessing, right? But as I was looking at .NET 6, .NET 6 ships November 9th. At least that's what one of the articles I read is. Which, how cool is that now that they give you the date? Like, it used to be like, well, it'll be sometime in November, and then it's December. It used to be, right? And then you were lucky if you got it in January. Their cadence seems to be really good these days.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's November 9th. That was an article I read.
Right.
And I think that's because that's when they have .NET Conf and things like that. So my guess is that Visual Studio probably drops around the same time, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that. I haven't seen that in writing, but I'm just making
right.
that assumption.
Right. We're just reading tea leaves. We don't know.
Yeah. Right. They don't tell us that much. Interestingly, we're .NET MVPs or whatever we are, Microsoft MVPs in .NET Technologies or something like that. And it used to be they gave us a whole lot of inside information. We get a little inside information, but most of this stuff is so public now.
Yeah. .NET is
that
developed
there's
in the
not really
open.
a need to have like the insider thing. Like everyone knows about .NET 6. It's not like we're seeing anything, super fast or anything like that. So, it's all public information.
I know that they like to hit that .NET Conf date because .NET Conf has found a home in early November. But I imagine that if for whatever reason it's not going to be exact, that's kind of why that's held a little close to the vest. But I do believe I'm right, and you just said that at Build, they did say yes at .NET Conf you're going to see it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, as a matter of fact, the article I'm looking at an article now. You don't have to show my screen just yet. It doesn't matter. But maybe you're showing my screen. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know you were showing it, but
sorry.
It does say right here, and this is Richard Lander, right, saying we'll launch .NET 6 on the 9th, right? So they're pretty confident they're going to make that date.
Right.
And hey, it's always great, think about, they are getting good at this, but I don't know how many sleepless nights come up to that. I'm always a big fan when when corporate management announces, that we're going live in November on something that we've got a lot of work yet to do, and maybe we didn't get all that much say in the date. I don't know. I think that they kind of work backwards. I bet they have the date and they have a good bucket list of things they want to put into the next version. And as they get close, they start to say, well, what's going to make it in and what's not going to make it in. Right.
Right. It could be,
and then they trim some things.
And that is an agile methodology, right? Is that you have two choices in an agile methodology. And I think some people would argue you actually have two choices in software anyway. It's just that some people sort of refuse to recognize that. And the choices are either ship when you finished a list of features or ship a date and the features that are done ship. I mean, and that's just reality. Yeah. Whether or not I think some of us in this world want to accept it, that's just fact. You have to make that choice. And yeah.
I feel like, by the way, I'm sorry, I saw a quick comment in here from Richard Corkery who said exactly. I'll be honest, I saw it a minute late, and I'm not sure what we were referring to. But I want to say hello to Richard Corkery because I know what's going to happen with Richard Corkery. Richard Corkery's another friend of the show, listens a lot, comments a lot. And what's going to happen is, because we actually work together, right? And I'll respond to him late, and he won't respond back. And what inevitably happens, I'm just calling him out here, is he starts watching the show, he starts listening, and something happens with the family, and he gets dragged away. And he usually watches it on the replay tomorrow. So we're always happy to have him live for as much as we can. So maybe he hears me responding back and not exactly making fun of him, but maybe a little bit. And maybe he'll be hearing me making fun of him tomorrow because that's the way it goes.
Well, listen, thanks for being here, Richard. So, let's go with that. Thank you very much for being here. So, are we ready? Are we ready to talk about like what this is?
Yeah. Right. Why don't we? Why don't we get into that? So I've got a bunch of articles that we can go through. I also, as you can see on my screen here, although I forgot to put Zoom it on, which is usually one of the things I do. Let me do that real quick. But you can see down here I've got.
Oh, I moved off. I thought you were going to go do something else. So here, I'll put you back on. Sorry.
I'm doing it on a different screen. Oh, I'm doing it on a different screen here, so it's no big deal, I guess.
But yeah, I see the logo for 2022 preview. I see it down there. It's got that little yellow bar. It says, I think it says pre in the smallest amount of pixels possible in order to try and render that.
Yeah, it's kind of small. You can it almost looks like PRC, or something like that, but it's close. Let's see. Let's see. So I should have Zoom it going. Oh, look at that. It didn't zoom my... I never thought about that. It didn't zoom my outer window. Do you notice that?
Yeah, interesting.
Zoom it only doesn't grab the bar here, right? You notice that?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's okay, there it goes. Well, yep, there it is.
That's weird.
We got it.
Maybe it had to do with where I had my mouse.
Circles it. Look at you. You're a Zoom It Pro. Nice.
I could be a Zoom It MVP if they would have me, right? That would be great. So anyway, I've got a bunch of articles that I grabbed out here. Now, so what happened is on June 17th, they announced .NET 6 Preview 5. Okay. And so I have this good article by Richard Lander from the team. I don't remember what his title is, but he's probably runs the whole, I don't know. I forget what Richard's title is. We could look it up. And then there's a previous article, on May 25th, they had .NET 6 Preview 4. And what I noticed as I was reading through this, and I just want to sort of start out with this here, is if you read this article and you say, oh, great, this is .NET 6. Well, what they talk about in this article isn't all of .NET 6. This is .NET 6 Preview 5.
Right.
And the things that were announced in .NET 6 Preview 4 aren't even in this article. So you really kind of need to aggregate them a little bit. Yeah. And we could try to do some of that tonight and aggregate these things for you. So, so I did jot down a couple of notes. And so we talked about .NET 6 shipping November 9th, first of all, right? And that's what it is. So we're on preview. What were these other previews? Preview 1, preview 2. I had to do a little research because I'm like, well, what's in preview 1, right? Well, preview 1, as far as I could tell, looked like it was really just some Maui stuff, right? Yeah. And, well, we've talked about Maui before, right, Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a show. We had Sam was here, right? Sam Basu was here to talk about.
Basu.
Yeah, talk about .NET Maui.
Talked about .NET Maui, which is, in my layman's terms, sort of like the next version of Xamarin Forms, essentially, right? But better.
I think that's a fair way to look at it.
I feel like I'm putting it down like it's just Xamarin Form, or something like that. They gave it a new name and new branding, but I think they're really taking it to the next level with Maui and stuff like that, right? So anyway, preview 1 was Maui. Preview 2 seemed to be Maui. Maybe a couple of other little things thrown into some of these. Preview 3 had some early support for .NET for hot reloads, and we'll talk a little bit about hot reloads, right? And I think we're going to do a demo if all goes well, and we're going to try out hot reload here. And so they had some early support for hot reloads in preview 3, and a couple of other little things that I don't know if they're like so huge, right? I mean, listen, for some people, and the people that wrote these enhancements, they would say, oh, that's a little disrespectful, Andy. I made one of those features that went into preview 3. I just like swept it off and said, some of these other little things, right, Chris? And I'd be like, thanks, if that's what my team did to me, right? Thanks a lot. So we could talk about preview 5, but this our show tonight, we didn't say we're talking about .NET 6 preview 5. We said we're talking about .NET 6, right?
Right. Yep.
So I was actually thinking, we could take a step back and look from May 25th at some of the really cool stuff that's in .NET 6 Preview 4 and start with that and then move on to the Preview 5 and things like that. What I will tell you what my first impression was as I scrolled down through these articles, the first time I scrolled through them, and I said, well, there's more in here than I was expecting. Right now, I don't know why. That's what was I expecting? I don't know. I wasn't following along with here's what we think is going to go into .NET 6 conversation, which is I'm sure had in public, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't really tuned into it. I guess I kind of figured, well, we had .NET 5 .NET 5 to me was a big deal. So I figured, well, maybe .NET 6 won't have a whole lot in. And honestly, I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on here, right? It kind of makes sense, I think, to talk about this. I think this is cool. They have this section here where they talk about .NET 6 themes.
Okay.
And Chris, I don't know if you've had a chance to read all this stuff, but I kind of like the way they're showing us the themes of what .NET 6 is, what it's meant, like what kind of problems it's meant to solve. Like, what is the overarching goal of .NET 6, right?
Yeah, sure.
And by the way, can you read this okay? I could zoom this a little bit of just regular.
So I think it looks pretty good. Let me take a look at it just for the heck of it. I want to look at it on another screen. I think probably zooming helps a little bit for our viewers.
Okay. I zoomed it a bit. I'm at like 120 now or something like that.
I have the advantage of seeing it on this huge screen, right? And so now I look over here. We're a little bit more realistic size screen, also with our faces on it. Yeah, I think that's good.
Right. And if you're just listening, as some people do,
yep.
We're going to talk through these things. You're not missing a whole lot right now, not seeing the screen, right? But I've got the article opened up here. And so it talks about some of the themes here. .NET appeals to new developers and students, right? This is something that they're really trying to do moving forward with .NET. I think that they recognize that, or at least they say that there's some sort of, that there's something that they need to do better to appeal to new people. It's hard to know, right? Because I'm not a new person and I'm not a student. And I like .NET. So,
right.
I'll sort of trust the marketing people, and that's something they're trying to do, right?
Yeah, I think, and here's where, like you said, is I did, I have looked through all these blog posts, but in looking for them to prep, I didn't remember which one said what or whatever. But I do have some familiarity with some of the themes because some of them I really drilled into and even offered some feed. And so this is the one where I think I maybe joined the conversation once or twice. In this particular theme, some of the things that they're looking for is an experience that mimics some other platforms where installation and getting started could be as simple as a couple pieces of command line. Maybe if you're on Windows, it's one download. Maybe if you're on Linux, it's not even that. It's like, hey, a quick apt get, and here it is. You're done. You're ready. So another part of the experience that maybe isn't here, because they do mention about streamlined experience in Visual Studio products. Mm-hmm. But part of that use case is a good focus on making sure Visual Studio Code is a great place to develop .NET 6, because that definitely appeals to new developers. It's a very lightweight, just boom, done. And what if you're a new developer that's getting your feet wet on lots of platforms? It's an easy shift over if you're already kind of heading down a path of maybe Python or something. It's like, look, I've already got an editor that will do this .NET thing. I'm just one install away, this .NET SDK, and boom, now I'm in the same editor I'm already familiar with. I think improved docs. Another thing that is our friend Maria Nagaga and her team pushing really hard that somebody could conceivably learn and use .NET entirely in notebooks, so that maybe some professors or you or I might even build notebooks that are like, hey, here's how to get started with .NET and just practice right here. Microsoft may even build some of those. So I feel like that was a lot of what this theme was.
Yeah, and let me just throw this in. I wasn't going to mention this here, but I do have Visual Studio Preview, right? We know that I have that, right? And I was going to say later when we got into this, but I got to tell you right now, I installed Visual Studio 2022 Preview like 3 hours ago. I just quickly threw it on. And I'm not lying. I went into this thing, you open up the Visual Studio installer, you say, or whatever it was, the thing opens up and you get that pop-up of like, what workloads do you want to install? I just clicked the top one, like the, ASP.NET Core kind of like web applications thing, whatever it was. I didn't include like WPF, and I didn't include everything, right? I just went for it quick. And I wasn't timing it because I wasn't expecting this, but Visual Studio installed in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, wow, talk about like the old, like, .NET is not for, it's just, it's this behemoth, installing Visual Studio, that whole, it is installed in 5 minutes. Like I was shocked, right?
Because I've done that before too.
Yeah.
Even back as far as 2017.
They talk about here.
Right.
They talk about some other themes in here too, and we don't need to go through all these. People can read these, but improve inner loop performance for .NET developers. I think this is a big one. And they talk about hot reload, which is a big thing in .NET and Visual Studio, right? Like you don't need Visual Studio for hot reload. It's a .NET thing, I guess, if I'm understanding that correctly. But yet it's exposed out through tooling within Visual Studio as well. But you can do it from the command line and things like that. So that's a big thing. Talk about meeting developer expectations. I don't want to like hang on this part of the thing the whole night, but a whole bunch of stuff, cloud native apps and things like that, right? So they have these themes laid out, and I think it's kind of cool for developers to know that there's a theme and to sort of understand, the why in addition to the what, right?
You keep going. I have to open the door real quick, but I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. So, so then they talk about some .NET unification stuff, which was very much a theme of .NET 5 and things like that. They talk about product confidence, and then they get into some of again, this was .NET 6 Preview 4, talking about, getting into hot reload with Visual Studio Debugger and .NET CLI. And we can try this. I do have Visual Studio 2019 version. So the hot reload stuff, I think, and Chris and I talked about this a little bit beforehand, we don't think it's actually in 2022 yet, because that's really just a very rough preview of 2022. But I will show that because there's some cool features in there. But in order to do hot reload, we know that it works in preview 2019. So maybe while we're talking, I'll start to get this open here. And
yeah,
I don't know how
I think that's right. Is that, and we're at an inflection point too.
This might be it here.
We're at an interesting.
This might be it. Yeah, this is preview. This is 2019 preview, right?
Yeah, we're at a weird inflection point too, where the team has been building .NET 6 tooling to work in 2019 preview, but then I'm sure at some point you got to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, let's start getting this ready for the next version, but maybe we don't have this over there. I mean, it's just so what an interesting life that must be to work on .NET for a big enterprise release, and you want it to run in current VS, but there's a future VS coming that you're working on, and to just, bringing all of those ships together. So so to be clear, this is 2019 preview. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So look what came up when I went to create a new project. Hive app, these were the top parts of the list here. I don't know what this stuff is. Mm-hmm. Hive, Pig. Is this something you've ever heard of? I don't even know what that is.
Not right now, no. I mean, there's so much. Okay. Look, if you just start scrolling down, there's so much going on in the world of software development.
Yeah. Well, look at the scroll bar. So I'm scrolling, and look how much room there is to go here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna just go to ASP.NET Core Web App, right? Because I think that's a good place to start for hot reload, and I'll call it Web Application 3. I just want to make sure that we get this is what I want. I think I want to do .NET 6, right? And let me just let that create, and we can talk about other things while this is creating. Maybe it'll go quickly. Hopefully it'll go kind of quickly, but so we're going to do this hot reload demo. We're going to try that out. But I also want to talk about, and we can come back to it, some of the other really cool things that as I scrolled through this, what jumped out and appealed to me in .NET 6 Preview 4, there's a lot of stuff for streaming, deserialization, and a lot of stuff in JSON and things like that. But I want to scroll down to the things that, and again, I don't want to like overshoot these things if you want to talk about them. But some things I thought were really cool were like these system.link enhancements, right? Link has gotten really powerful and it continues to grow. And what I really thought was cool was that like link support for index and range parameters, right? And you actually quite a while ago, I think on the show, I remember a night when you were talking about those things, not with regard to link, but with regard to
C#
collections, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So look at this. So I don't need to type this in, but look at this enumerable range, and there's a range, and they're saying, give me the element, and it's like what do you call that? *2, right? Which means give me the second from the last element, right? Mm-hmm. And again, this is unfortunate if you're. I would encourage people if you're just watching the show to check out these links. We'll include the links on the.
Come check it out on YouTube and look at the description. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but to me, like this is cool. So, like, look at these other examples here with take .3, right? So instead of writing, instead of source take 3, and then here's skip 3, which is 3 ... But I like when you really get to these interesting ones here, right? Like instead of saying source, which is the collection, source.take7.skip2, you just say source.take2 ... 7, because we're using those range parameters, right?
Right.
And you know what? This is one of those things that like, well, there's smarter people than me out there, right? But like this never even crossed my mind, but like, what a great idea. Like, what? It's one of those things that makes you think like, why didn't it always do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like system.range, if I remember correctly, I think came in C#8. I think
so.
But this is the thing about C# is that, it's being iterated on much more quickly. So I don't know if it's super important to know when or what or whatever. But the idea here was, hey, we have ranges. Why don't the link methods take them? So that's cool.
And it seems like such a it's kind of really interesting. Like, look at this one. This one says, instead of source take last 7, skip last 3, you can use that. I guess I call it it's the caret, right? Is there another name for that you know of? When you're referring to a range?
I think that operator has a name. Because I know that the ... is called the range operator. And these are C# names, because what I want to make clear is if you're watching the show and you're coming from another language that like uses ranges, I know that Python is popular for its use of ranges, is that you might already be saying, well, they're not exactly the same. And that's true. But ... is called the range operator in C#. I don't remember a name for the caret in this case, but I'll take a look while you're talking here.
Yeah, it always implies like last, right? It's like the last 7 and skip the last 3. Anyway, right? Like from a syntax perspective, like when I look through these enhancements, I want to be really clear here. So the things that jump out at me when I get a new version of .NET are the things that sort of make my life as a developer easier. And we all have different things that make lives easier for us, right? There are tons of stuff in here for like, very specific performance improvements and very specific, optimizations within, the languages and frameworks and tools and stuff like that, which I feel like I implicitly gain those things because I'm using them and it's great. And I'm thrilled that they're working on those things for me, right? But they're not the things that jump out. Whereas this is something where I say, I'm going to use that line of code right there. Like that is something that's going to just make my code a little simpler, a little cleaner. I think if you're used to using index and range, it's cleaner. Now, I mean, to be honest, I guess the more readable version, you could argue, take last 7, skip last 3, isn't so bad either, right? It's pretty readable. But I liked that. I like this other stuff. Then there's some other cool stuff down here. And I'm skipping things, right? I want to be really clear. I'm skipping things. But I kind of like this next section where they have this distinct by / union by, intersect by, except by, where they've added the by, right? So you always had distinct and union. And what they're doing is sort of simplifying. I think it's really simplifying the way we say this kind of stuff. And so if you look at the example here, you have an enumerable and you're saying distinct by x, where x is like mod 3, right? No, not mod 3. This would be, is that mod 3? It's going to give us 1, 2, 3. That's interesting. Is that right? That can't be a mod. I thought percentage was mod, right?
Yeah. So hold on. Let's see here. So if you have an enumerable of range 1 through 20, and you mod every one of those, if you mod every one of those by 3, so you go 1 mod 3, 2 mod 3, 3 mod 3. What they're saying here, let's forget distinct by for a second. If all you did was enumerable dot range, and then did the mod operator over all of them, you would get a set of values that contained 1, 2, 3 over and over and over again, right?
Oh, right.
But because we're using distinct by, it's saying, okay, run this operation, get that set, but I only want the distinct values in the grouping. I think that's right. What I'm kind of interested in here.
You explained it right. I was having trouble with the mod, but you're right. The distinct part is cutting out all those duplicate values and stuff like that. But you can see here like max by and min by. Really what they're saying is, people max by person age, right? Like there were other ways to write this.
So, right. I think if I remember correctly, distinct, and this distinct, because this is all from memory. Distinct, the traditional distinct operator or method doesn't take parameters, right? Right. So basically all you can do is hand it.
So again, I'm from memory on this too, but I think it was always like you would do something, blah, 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 dot distinct.
So all you can do is hand distinct an enumeration, an IEnumerable of some kind. And it says like, okay, fine, here's another IEnumerable with just with where I've taken out all the duplicates. But what distinct by lets you do is say, hey, I want you to do the same thing, but I want to specify the operation that you run on the IEnumerable first.
Right.
Yeah, because you could have done enumerable. You could have done enumerable dot range 1 to 20 dot select and done the x goes to x mod 3 and then distinct. I feel like I'm not doing that. I feel like I'm doing that a little bit of a disservice because I think union by is the concept of saying, I think it's the concept of saying instead of just union, where in the past what we would have done is just taken these parameters that you gave me, these two sets, and we would have just smushed them together, is we're now also letting you define operations on them so that all at once we're smushing the two sets together. Oh, and by the way, let's not just take person. Let's just, all I really want is person's age. Like that's all I want. I think the funny thing about it is I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right because.
No, I think we're doing a union as age is what we're joining them on, right?
Because not everything came across, right? Pat didn't come across. Right. Ashley did. Pat did not.
We got 20, 30, 40, 30, 30, 33. So 33 doesn't come across because the age doesn't match anything, right?
Right.
We got Lindsay. We got Francis as a 20. I don't know that we got. Oh, and Lindsay
I see what happened.
Right, the ones that match come across, but that was actually 40.
But only the first of each. Only the first of each one did. So it's like a group by, but see how Lindsay's 30 is the only 30 that came across, the only person of age 30 that came across?
Yeah.
Claire and Pat did not, but Francis did, Ashley did, Drew did.
Oh, right.
Presumably.
Union on age, right. So we're getting both of them.
Yeah.
But we're sort of, right. Yeah, exactly. It's taking some of the items out of the union because the age has to be like sort of distinct or something like that, right?
You know what's tough about these particular examples is
show the before and after.
It's probably hard to come up with. It's probably hard to come up with examples that don't feel contrived for distinct by, union by, intersect by, except by. But then that day is going to come where you're thankful for it because it took what might have been several lines of code and just did what you wanted.
Right.
This next one is easier to fit. Yeah, the next one.
This is the one that, I used to like swear that it was in there already. And every time I'd go to use it, it wasn't in there. And I don't know why it wasn't in there. Okay.
Yeah.
But, right, like first or default or any of these or defaults, right? Anytime you have the or default, right? Now it takes a parameter. So it used to be if you said single or default, if you used to do this beforehand and you'd say, I have if I wanted to do, I'm trying to think of an example because I don't know if this example makes a whole lot of sense, but the point is that this one, instead of returning a 0, which a default for an integer is 0.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Unless it's nullable, right? It's not nullable. So the default is 0. In this case, they're saying, I want the singular default, but use the -1 for the default, right? And by doing so, it returns a -1 because the numerable is empty. There's nothing in there, right?
Yeah, right.
There's other ways that this can happen, right? But, so many times if I had a collection of objects and I said, give me the object where, the ID is 75 or something like that. Well, and again, I'm making this example up off the top of my head, but instead of getting null back, I would say, why don't you give me an empty one or something like that, an empty object. And so now I believe you could do that by saying singular default and in parentheses say new, whatever, new person or new something, right?
Right. Because the original implementation was you would get null, which was like the last thing you probably want.
In some cases, right? It depends on what the use case is here, right? But sometimes I want like a default object or I want a default instance of the thing as opposed to null or something. Yeah. So anyway, I feel like this is another one of those things that I could see being really cool. This zip one, I guess, used to support only 2 things to zip together, right? And now it supports a third, which is cool. I think we used to just like concatenate zip into zip into zip. To do more than that, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, and then there's a whole bunch of like performance. There's more performance stuff in here. I'm trying to remember. I'll look at my notes and see if there's anything else that I really wanted to talk about. And again, if there's something you saw in here. Oh, yeah, there's one more that I definitely want to talk about here. Enhanced date, comma, time.
Yeah.
I wanted to say comma time as opposed to date time. Right? It's not date time. It's date, comma, time, and time zone support. And now we have date only and time only structs.
Yeah.
Right? And how many times have we wanted a date that didn't have some sort of like time on it of 00000, whatever the heck the default time was on a date? Or the same thing for time, right? I want to know what time something happened, but the date isn't really relevant, right? There is no date.
Yeah.
I just want to set something, like a timestamp, really more actually.
Show me all the games that start at 7:30 p.m. 7:30 p.m. doesn't have a date attached to it, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And and I noted like this is what part of it that kind of stood up to me.
Yeah.
Ideal for recurring meetings. Oh, here you go. Right. Recurring meetings, alarm clocks. And it aligns with SQL Server's time type, right?
Yeah.
SQL Server has this already. SQL Server has the date type.
Yeah. There's always been that weirdness that as a .NET developer, when going back and forth to those types, you either get baggage or you ship baggage that SQL Server just can't use.
Right.
Kind of weird.
And it's been, I mean, I would say that this is one that I think has probably frustrated me my entire .NET career. You know, like I always remember just being frustrated by this problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really glad to see that here, you know. You know, again, there's more stuff in here if you want. I can scroll through it slowly, or we can jump in right now, right up to .NET. Wait, hang on. We said we were going to try this. What if we go back and try hot reload?
Yeah, sure.
For a minute. So
totally live too. Studio. How many times have you tried this before, Andy?
Tried this
awesome.
Yet.
Look at that. That's awesome. So just for those people listening, we're in Visual Studio 2019, the latest preview as of this date. And Hot Reload is a feature. Well, Andy's setting it up here. Hot Reload is a feature in .NET 6 that, you know, if you're a veteran of Visual Studio, and heck, let's be honest, even like VB, this might remind you of like Edit and Continue, where in the IDE you could change code in a running the process is running, you're debugging it, and you change a little bit of code, you click a continue button. I don't remember, I can't tell you the technical details of how it worked, but it would like actually take your change right in the middle of your debugging session. Like you could look at the next line of code. You could be debugging and be on a line of code and say, oh my gosh, the next line is totally wrong, and just fix it right there. And VB was famous for this being incredible. And Edit and Continue in the .NET world took some catching up. What's different about Hot Reload, as Andy's kind of setting this up here to get going, is this is not technically a Visual Studio feature. This is a .NET feature. So exactly. Yeah, you got a web application going.
Sort of interesting. So I don't know. So I just created a new application. Now what I ended up with, you know, I wasn't paying all that much attention, but I've got Razor, right?
Yep.
But this is code. This is C#, right? This is code right here, what I'm highlighting. View data title equals homepage, right? And so what I should be able to do, and I'm going to just run this thing, and let's just see what happens here. Because again, I was going to try this in advance, and I really said, let's be organic here or whatever, and let's do this. And gosh, it's slow, but you know, I find that when I'm on Skype and when I'm sharing, everything is slow. So I don't want to blame this on Visual Studio. I'm more inclined to blame this on Skype and the performance of my machine. I hear my fan plugging along too. So let's see. Well, that was, you know, a little slow, but what should happen now, because I've watched, you know, I've seen this before. Okay, well, right, it's going to start up the little console as it does to render my app very slowly here. I feel like I can use my sound effects. Does this still work? Wow.
So there's some interesting
sound effect ran out of time.
Oh, really?
Look at that. Operation Techno. That was weird. Now, okay. Now, what's cool is I can see the hot reload button here, by the way. So, okay, let's try to not get too caught up in the speed of this here, because I don't think that's necessarily Visual Studio. You know, I'm more inclined to think it's like a Skype just beating my machine up or something like that, because we're sharing and stuff. So, okay, so here it is. And if I look at it, it says homepage, and I got welcome here, but I'm going to say, you know, homepage is right up here. I'm going to say homepage changed. Oh, what's going on here? Hang on. Okay, there it is. Sorry, my it was a little slow. I think it's just having some problems here. But so now the page still says homepage here. Right now, I'm assuming this is going to work because I haven't tried this before, and I'm only just changing the data for the page here, right? So now I'm going to hit save. I just want to say something. I'm saving it. right? Like this should not work, by the way. I just want to be clear, but I'm going to refresh the page and it hasn't changed yet, right? Like that's okay. It hasn't changed yet. Okay. So that's not what makes it work. But now I'm going to hit this apply code changes. And when I do that.
Okay. So it's possible that this will not work.
It is possible.
I happen to be reading an article from the 18th where Dan Roth says,
yep.
Hot Reload works with Razor files using .NET Watch. That capability is coming to a future Visual Studio update. Okay. And I wasn't 100% sure. I was like, maybe Razor.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you built a console app, and the console app just does something dumb.
Console apps.
It just does something dumb like adds numbers. But what you do is we see the app running, and you hit a breakpoint before it's about to do that operation and say, no, I don't want to add 2. I want to add 3. And I know
it's hard to believe that a console application could do that, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like I'm more inclined to think this would work, with a web page where you're reloading it. I don't know how a console application would do that, but let's try that, right? Because it's supposed to work for console.
One of the things I don't know here is if and I'm not trying to suggest that we're checking the wrong thing, is if we'd have better success with .NET Watch, because the feature is developed there first.
Work also, yeah,
yeah,
totally right.
The feature's developed for CLI first, yeah. So.
Let's just try this. It was easy enough to generate. Now you can see how my machine is just not happy. Something's just really annoyed. I don't have that much open, quite frankly. But hang with us, and maybe we won't spend a lot of time on this demo because there's plenty to talk about with .NET. We haven't even gotten to the latest version, and there's actually other stuff I want to show in here, to tell you the truth. But what is going on here? Now, it could be the preview that's causing problem, but I don't know. I want to look at Task Manager here. That's always good. Oh, no, there we go. 90. It's kind of high here.
Yeah.
Whole machine's unhappy, and I don't know. Skype is the culprit here, probably, right?
Yep.
Well, anyway, I could stop sharing and just do this myself and tell you guys what happens.
I wonder if
faster.
I wonder what version I have. I wonder if my machine would. I'm not sure.
It's unfortunate.
You said 1611, right?
Yeah.
Let me see what happens here. I'm going to try firing it up over here.
Oh, watch the whole stream crash, right? This is, I don't know, this is not coming back.
Here, let's come back to that. If you have another feature you want to talk about, that's fine. And then while we're talking, I'm going to give this a shot.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the right way to do it, honestly, because I don't know what happened. I'm just going to close that and let them return it. So let's go back to our list, right? So now we get to preview 5, right? And preview 5 has a whole bunch, has some additional stuff in here. I mean, honestly, one of the things I really wanted to spend time on was Visual Studio 2022 and talk about IntelliCode, which is pretty cool, and that's sort of a different thing. But let's scroll through this a little bit and look at some of the new features that are in .NET 6 Preview 5. And so, these are a little harder for me to talk about, right? Like optional workload improvements, right? SDK workloads is a new .NET SDK feature that enables us to add support for new application types like mobile and WebAssembly without increasing the size of the SDK. So that's pretty cool, right? They're always working on performance and the size of things, right? There's also some Nuget package validation, which makes sure that validating packages validating libraries to make sure packages are consistent and well formed and things like that. More Rosalind Analyzers, right? Rosalind Analyzers are super helpful to us You can use like a plethora of these things to run within Visual Studio, I guess. I mean, I guess you can use them outside of Visual Studio too. I think of Rosalind always within Visual Studio, but maybe you can do that stuff manually. I don't know. And what's kind of cool here is that these are community contributions from somebody named Newell Clark and Mike Trenell. I'm really not sure if I'm saying that name correctly. And they submitted these Rosalind Analyzers, right? So what's cool is that if you want to be like a part of .NET, you can submit things. You can submit implementations and such into the library, and they'll take your pull requests, I guess, if they like it, right? So how cool is that?
Some of the earlier things you showed in the blog, like the contributions for range operators and stuff, I think they also
Really?
Specified some contributors there. Yeah, it was just a real quick blurb. But no, isn't that cool? I think it's cool not only that it's discussed and developed in the open, because all of these improvements are talked about in the GitHub repo. And then what happens is somebody comes along and might, I don't know, look, I wasn't there, but they might have said like, hey, I've already got like a prototype working, or even just offers to do it. And I love how they say, hey, thanks to these folks for pushing this across the finish line, right?
Totally. It's community, right? It's cool.
Right.
And they credit the people accordingly, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's cool. There's a new default font or a default font setting for Windows Forms. What I thought was most interesting about this. Well, what do you think is most interesting? Like, if you haven't even read this yet, but if you see that you can now set a default font for an application with application.set default font. And what's interesting about that to you? I can tell you what's interesting about it to me, but I'm curious if you're going to think the same thing I do.
To be fair, in WinForms, it's just probably something I never thought about. But I'm sure that I'm just missing something.
What I'm getting at here is more of a, I don't know, I don't want to say it's a sarcasm or a joke or whatever, but they're still adding things to Windows Forms.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even think that.
I was just thinking about it like at the root level, like Windows Forms is mentioned here in .NET 6.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, for all the people that think like Windows Forms is dead.
Yeah. We've heard Scott Hunter at Tech Bash, by the way.
Yeah.
When he was on stage at Tech Bash, I remember one of the things he did was demonstrate at the time, I believe he was demonstrating single file XC, like an early prototype, and I could be wrong which feature he was demonstrating, so I apologize if I'm wrong. But he was demonstrating that feature, and he chose to use a WinForms app, and I remember a comment he made, and it's probably on the video that you have up on the site, where he said, WinForms is an extremely productive framework. You just get stuff done. And so I feel like a lot of people poo-poo the past because they say, oh, well, WPF or something else. Like, I don't care. Take your pick about what you could use instead. And they forget the point that, remember how you could just open up a WinForms app and just get a bunch of stuff done really fast?
Right. So
keeping that going
so
is pretty cool.
Is a big deal or not, I couldn't say. I personally haven't written those forms in quite a while.
Yeah, that's cool.
But I thought it was interesting. And they do mention they're dropping support for some older frameworks and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can get into on this. The point is, like, I'm scrolling down this, and if you look over at my scroll bar, like, there's a lot to go here still.
Yeah.
And I try to like jump through and look at some things that jump out at me, but like libraries WebSocket compression, like, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't even know what this is, right? Allows compressing WebSocket message payloads using the deflate algorithm. That's cool. I don't know what that is, but I have a feeling I probably appreciate it if I'm using WebSockets for things. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to understand all these things, but but I can respect that there's a lot going into this thing. Like I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's just more and more stuff coming, that are like enhancements. And so, I mean, from my perspective, I kind of felt like the previous preview had a little bit more like things that really jumped out to me personally.
Yeah.
But other people might have. And listen, if someone wants to leave a comment, either now live or in the future, and say what they think is cool about, .NET 6, any of these features, we'd love to hear from them. But what I wanted to move on to as well is spend a little bit of time, and we were kind of going to do a sample in there, but there's different versions of Visual Studio and all this. But I'd like to talk a little bit, unless you got that sample working. About
I was just going to say
2022. Yeah. And what's special about that?
I was going to say, do you want to see Hot Reload in action?
I do. I definitely do. Do you have it? You got it working?
Yeah, it works. So check this out.
And what version of Visual Studio are you using?
This is Visual Studio 2019. Well, let's take a look. 2019 Preview 2. Okay.
Do you want to share to Skype for me?
Is it not showing it to you?
I think I'm still sharing Skype. You're not sharing, in the Skype window for me and you. I can see it on the stream.
Okay. I wonder why.
Or was that going to break something? Like, I don't want to
because in Skype, what you should be seeing. Oh, I get what you're saying. I think you have to stop sharing in Skype, maybe.
Oh, okay. I can stop. Usually, I think it'll override it, but that's okay. I'll stop sharing.
You're probably right that I could do that. Let me try it. Let me try it real quick, Andy.
That's okay. I hit stop, so it should stop sharing.
Did that do what you wanted or not really?
Yes, sir. It certainly did.
Okay. So, and if folks don't mind, because this is a little bit of new technology here, looks good on the stream. Yep. You see the full screen. Here's a console application. All it does is write hello world. It stores a value in sum, and then it prints that back out. So just a real quick dumb run, and unfortunately, of course, we knew it would start on another screen, and of course that's super duper small, but you can see that the sum is 4, right? That's totally expected. That's not a shock. That shouldn't be unusual. Now I don't know that that's gonna remain. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna set a breakpoint here. Actually, no, let's actually set it here, and then we'll set one after the final console write line so that the program pauses. Now I'm going to debug the application, and let me get that window over here. So here we are. Oh man, what am I doing wrong? I'm trying to make this nice and big so people can see. I can see that there are defaults I need to set so that it's like stream ready,
I don't
right?
About that right now.
So here we are. We can see.
You weren't even supposed to do this demo. Like you're hooking everybody up.
So we can see pretty clearly that line 9 executed. Line 11, we're on line 11. And I say to myself, it's not 2 plus 2. That's ridiculous. It's not 2 plus 2. It's 2 plus 8. And we're running right now, by the way. It's 2 plus 8. So let me click the little fire button, apply code changes, and something happened. I don't know. Down in the lower left, it says code changes were applied successfully. I think I actually have Zoom installed, but I don't know for sure. That's Control F1.
No,
right?
Don't worry. I mean, yeah.
But anyways, now let's go to the next line of code. We haven't written out to the console yet, but the value of sum is 10.
Right.
And then let's go ahead and let that write out to console. And it made the code change. I didn't exit out of the program to make the code change. Like, how many times a day do you do that? I can tell you how many times a day did I do that today, where I got, I'm not even kidding when I say this, where I got to a line of code and said, okay, now that I'm examining, the state of the application around this line of code, looking at some variables, looking at whatever, this line of code is wrong. So I hit the stop button, change the line of code, run again. How many times did I do that today? And what the potential of of a hot reload is the potential of hot reload is you don't have to do it anymore. So I do want to address, we got a great comment in the chat, and unfortunately, like, all the sausage is being made, right? So that says, I think this demo is actually edit and continue and not hot reload. So hot reload is a new button, this fiery button. And yes, it actually is a .NET feature. And Visual Studio veterans, like all of us, we're used to edit and continue. We knew it was there. We're doing this inside Visual Studio. If I had a little bit more time and maybe had prepped it and tested it out, we would go do this from the command line using .NET Watch, and it uses the same .NET Watch functionality under the covers. What's happening is they're integrating it also into VS, so it's going to have an edit and continue feel. It's going to feel a lot like it, but the core of the logic is built into .NET, so that means not only does it work in ASP.NET Core, in WPF, in WinForms, in console apps, so on, so on, so on. It's also going to work. What's one of the themes of .NET nowadays? Code on your Mac, code in Linux, code on your PC. Who cares? Everything from the command line. So all of that stuff will work with .NET Watch. And hey, like I said, Loka, I am glad that you said that, because that's what I thought too. All you did is you expressed what I thought the first time I saw it. And what I finally got across, like in my head, and after really listening, I had to see it a couple times before I finally went like, oh wait, this is moving out of Visual Studio. Well, moving out of is the wrong term. This isn't a Visual Studio feature. This is .NET now. It's like this is you're getting this just by going into this platform, so you take it with you. That is I think that's the big difference that you're saying, right? Like, edit and continue, right? And Loka's, again, I agree, right? It's true. It's sort of the same thing. But the difference is edit and continue is a Visual Studio sort of workaround, I guess you could say, to a situation, albeit a good one, right? But hot reload is a framework, is a .NET thing. Right.
And there's a bigger deal than that. And edit and continue, I think, only worked in certain situations, right? Or something. Maybe that's not the right word, situations, but certain, like, it didn't always work on all places. And what you're saying is, no, this is going to work. It will work. It doesn't maybe work yet, today in all places.
Right.
But it will, I think, is what they're saying.
It's going to keep working in more and more places, and where they'll get by November, I'm going to be fair and say I don't know that I've read enough to see if they're landing at like, what could you possibly dream of that wouldn't work, or if they're like, well, but even considering some of the demos that we saw, either in build videos or just what so Dan Roth, I think, was on the ASP.NET community stand-up, I think just a week or two ago. And I think he demoed all this and talked about it. And that's where I happened to catch the little blurb where he said, hey, this doesn't work in Razor yet. Razor. And so I wasn't trying to let Andy fail. Trust me. I thought, what if that's old? What if that's old and it just works, right? Like, because this stuff moves so quickly that it could already be going by now. So when that didn't work, I said to myself, well, it's got to work in a console app. And this beast of a machine was like, yeah, whatever. I can run Visual Studio and Skyvan Stream with 0 dropped frames. So,
yeah, my machine is not the beast that yours is.
Yeah. So, anyways,
that's for sure.
I think that in the future, I don't know that today's the day. I think in the future, examining the productivity enhancements that don't just come with the new Visual Studio, but even, see, this is an interesting theme, right? In the past, we always looked to the Visual Studio team to provide productivity enhancements. We looked to the editor teams, whether it was VS Code or it was Visual Studio IDE, or heck, even Visual Studio for Mac, like whatever. And now we're getting that focus coming out of platform. Like they're saying, yeah, there are things we can do that make your life better. And that's a little bit of a shift in focus. I don't want to say in focus, but for that to be added to the priority list, like, I think that's cool.
Yeah. Hey, so I don't know if this is going to work, but I've got 2022 open and wanted to show another feature now.
Yeah.
My machine seems to be working okay. If I start sharing, it may bog down again, but I'm up for giving it another try if you don't mind.
I don't mind. When I've got you sharing, I will
sharing and
I will transition us over there.
Let me start sharing.
So I don't know how well that demo played for people listening. I hope.
Well, I mean,
I hope it made sense.
I think .NET developers, right, have enough understanding. Like when you tell the story, I'm running the code, I'm changing it, and look at that. I didn't stop it and restart it, and the changes took effect. Like that's the end of the day. That's what we want to see, right?
I've always felt that it's like reading a comic book to everybody online. Like in the first pane, Snoopy is laying on his doghouse. All right, Andy, what are we looking at? We're looking at Console App 4.
Yeah, so I'm going to scale this up a little bit. So the whole point here is this is Visual Studio 2022 Preview 1, I think. And, I just created a new console application, and I typed public class user, and I did this. I just wanted to see if my machine was running okay. Now, this new IntelliCode has been around for a while. IntelliCode is different than IntelliSense, and I'm not sure I'm going to do it justice, but I'm going to explain what I think it is, right? IntelliSense is the feature where I say, I have a string and I hit dot, and it gives me a bunch of methods, like, or I have an object and I hit dot, and it says, do you want a toString, or what do you want to do? And it gives me a list of the methods, right? It helps me write code. That's IntelliSense. And we like those features, right? Console.WriteLine. If I hit console and I hit the dot there, it will show me a list of methods on the console object, right? Yeah. On the console class in this case.
Right.
So IntelliCode is sort of the next, it's sort of a modern version of that. But, and again, I hope I'm explaining this right, but what I understand IntelliCode to be is machine learning applied to my code, right? Machine learning and AI, essentially. And so what they've done is they've studied thousands of repos of code, right? And they use AI to predict what I might want to write in my code based on what other people wrote in their code under certain circumstances, right? So I'll give you an example here. And I think this is like really cool and maybe a little bizarre, if you want to be honest, right? So if I write public string first name, right? And I set up my, okay. So there's IntelliCode happening again right away. By the way, if you can see that it's in gray.
Yeah.
All right. That code hasn't been applied yet.
Right.
Right.
But that's a lot different from what we used to get. Like.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to go backwards here a little bit. Let me just back that up because I kind of forgot it was going to happen right there. So I hit get, and if I hit semicolon, well, I'll see. There it was. So now it says set, and it says tab to accept. Now I don't have to accept that. I can do whatever I want to do. I can say no thanks.
Yeah, right. It's just a getter. Yeah,
I
sure.
Want to. Just a getter. Yeah, right. Or, actually, I didn't realize it was going to happen that quick because I'm not that used to it. Or I can say tab to accept. Okay? And it's kind of saying, and again, this isn't Visual Studio with some rule in it that says if you type set, if we type get, we should suggest the word set. That would be like rule-based configuration, right? Where I can say anytime I type get, remind me to type set. That is a more of a rule-based configuration, right? You know what I mean? Right. Now, look at that.
Well, what they were saying there, and I think this is going to bring it home, is instead of saying like, look, when you type get, we know that you might probably want to set. What they're really saying, if I understood what you said correct earlier, was that when we analyzed all those repos, we found that most of the time people are doing auto properties and they want to type get set. So we're just going to not just make your life a little simpler, but it's even kind of like that. Hey, don't forget, an auto property looks like this. But I love what you were about to show next.
Yeah. So you saw it, right? It was kind of like I screwed up my demo. I gave away the reveal here, but this blew my mind. Okay, when I hit enter here, they're going to suggest the next line of code.
Yeah.
And the likelihood is that if I had a first name, again, what we said is this isn't configuration. This is when we looked at, when Microsoft and whatever their engine is, analyzed all these repos, when there was a first name, there was usually a last name property, right? This is complete machine learning sort of AI magic, right? So what do? I hit tab, okay? And it gave me that. Now we're not done though, because if I hit enter again,
yep.
Well, that's interesting.
That's interesting that it went and grabbed something else.
It's giving me name.
Yeah, I hear you.
Which is a little weird. Probably not the one I would want, right?
Okay.
But I think I can trick this into doing other stuff. So if I do something like public string, and I want to type in phone number, I wonder if it'll start to pick up. No, so it's not doing that, right? So that's okay. Let's see what happens. Now then it's also telling me to put that. Oh, see, that's getting a little confused now, honestly. I don't know. Now let's see what it does. Oh, look.
Look at that.
Okay. You see what it did?
That's kind of cool.
Still thinking like, okay, if you have phone, you probably have email, right? Oh, look, password. Okay, now that might not be the one I want.
Yeah.
And you could argue that this isn't really helping, like in this scenario. But there's other cases where it might help, right? Now, again, I don't have a lot of demo for this. There was a few things I saw, but so most of the time after people write console write line hello world, they have another write line. Now, they're not suggesting what I put in there. Right. They're saying you probably want another write line. Now, I don't know what the heck this is, quite frankly.
How interesting. Yeah. How interesting.
And so at a certain point, does this get annoying?
Sure. I hear what you're saying.
I don't know. I've seen some good demos of this, right? And there's better demos than mine about this thing. Like if I was to go in here and say, we could actually do some things. If I say now, how about I say user? I've got a user class, right? Look what it's giving me. I typed user, and it's telling me like immediately I bet you're going to want to say. Yeah. So here's what's interesting, and I don't think. All right, I want to be clear here. I don't think it analyzed a lot of code and said when people have a user class and they say user, user with a capital U, class name, then normally they create an instance of it. I think what they're saying is when people start to type the name of a class, they usually want to instantiate it. And when they instantiate the class, usually, again, if I'm thinking about a machine learning approach to this, and now for some reason it's gone away, right? It's not coming back for me here. And that might be because it thinks I'm mad at it because I hit enter. But what I'm saying here is, user, right? It's saying, I think what it's saying here is usually people want to instantiate the class, and they usually use a camel case naming convention, right? Like, I don't think this is specific to user. This is now, let's think about what someone might want to do with this class and how might they want to name it. And so if I say tab to accept, that time it didn't give me the new, but okay, let's do new user. Okay. And I can tab. Oh, I don't know what that is. I'm not good at this yet, right? Like, I think you got to get some muscle memory into sort of like the way we do it. And now that I've done that, well, it still wants to do this console thing. And I'm in a thing, but let's do user dot. Okay. Now, this one seems a little simple, I think, because it's not all that different than like this is IntelliSense, right? This list here, I can zoom in. This list here that got kind of grayed out. This is IntelliSense, right?
Yeah.
This is giving me a list of potential options. IntelliCode is saying, oh, I think they want to set the email property, and if I do that,
right,
it's not giving me anything else at that point, but what is it going to do? I don't know. Now, what if I did something like, oh, okay, so it sees I'm setting properties, and maybe I want to work my way down the list, right?
Yeah.
If I do, I wonder what order it'll go in. I'm just typing in, stuff here. Okay. Now, again, I just want to be really clear here. When I hit enter, I'm not hitting like control dot or control space. Like I'm not hitting anything to make this thing come up, right? It's just grayed out a little bit, and I can hit tab if I want to accept it, or I can ignore it. Now, I don't know if it's because my font is so bold. I'm going to make my font normal. Or not bold, but I have my font large, and I know it's probably harder to read here. But it's nice. It's kind of nicely faded out here. But when I zoom it up a little, which is not my normal work experience to go to 150, it seems not as faded as I would want it to be. You know what I mean? Like to be subtle. Chris, you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. I
think that's just because I'm zoomed in, though. Like it looks more subtle normally than it does here. Like I want this to be a little bit more in the background so that I can ignore it if I want to and just do like something like console dot, but look what I typed C. Cannot unload app domain exception. I mean, I don't know why that comes up. Quite frankly, like some of that stuff seems a little strange to me.
Yeah.
But, if I do something like int I, okay, look, right? So, okay, it's saying I probably want to initialize at 0. I like that idea, right? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what I don't know, maybe you know the answer here, is I kind of thought I remember that IntelliCode, not only does it analyze these public repos. That's what that's where it gets its code from, like open source libraries or something like that. But is it also analyzing my code? And to be clear, I don't have any code here, right? Like there's nothing here.
Right.
But I wonder if it's also looking at my code. And I can't remember if it does or does not do that.
I think it can. I'm reaching into my memory bank and feeling like there's some opt-in you have to do in your project. And then to top it all off, I was thinking too. To top it all off, I'm pretty sure that this happens on your machine. Like, in other words, there was some conversation about your source code being your source code. I'm going to stop there though, because I don't want to misrepresent how this feature works, and I simply don't know. Like, too much of me sort of remembering things, that's not good enough. So if you're listening and you want to rely on what I'm saying, I think probably the better thing to do is go look up IntelliCode and check out what the feature is. Something interesting. Can you go ahead and
I want to show one other thing on visual. So by the way, if I type if, right, I'm still sort of in this feature, even though notice it said if I double equals 0.
Yes.
Is a suggestion for me, but that's actually the next thing I wanted to mention is that Visual Studio has a new default font.
Yep.
Okay, and I can do like Control Q and do font and go in here and see.
I think it's Cascadia Code, but I don't remember for sure. I could be wrong. Maybe it's not.
No, this is interesting.
Oh, it's Theory Code. That's right.
Theory Code. No, this is not. This is interesting. So I've changed my default for Visual Studio.
Oh.
And it's taking the fact that I've changed the font to Theory Code. Theory Code is a font that I like to use. Now, the font that they use is called, I have it written down here, Cascadia.
Yeah.
Right? which supports ligatures, and it looks almost identical to Fear Code, quite frankly. I wouldn't notice the difference. So this is interesting that so how would I get it to use? All right, so watch this. I'm going to say use defaults, okay? Because it's remembering this is my setting for Visual Studio, even though I just installed a new version. By the way,
but your cloud settings,
props to Visual Studio that I set this in 2019 and it remembered it, right?
Yeah.
If I say use defaults, it's going to default to Cascadia Mono, okay? And if I do that, it's a little different looking, right? It's a different font, right? I don't know it so well enough to recognize, but the same thing applies. Oh wait, now it's not showing the ligatures. Is that how you say that word?
I don't know what they're
wonder,
called, but I know what you're saying.
I wonder why it's not doing that, because double equals should be one. And I'm a little confused about that. Again, I'm just doing demos without trying them at all. Like this was just me saying, let's do this. Maybe. Okay, I thought maybe it was like the...
I know the default was Consolus for a while, but like you're saying...
It was, and they changed it to this new one. Cascadia Mono. But why is it not showing? And honestly, this doesn't even look like Cascadia to me, which is kind of strange. So did I screw something up?
I
Do I have to close a window?
I thought the default was Cascadia Code. Because I'm seeing here in the blog post from Amanda Silver, April 19th, 2021, Cascadia Code, a new fixed width font for better readability and ligature support. So it's interesting that when you said use defaults, it picked up something different. So I'm interested to see what happens if you switch it to Cascadia Code. And I'm reading that out of her blog post. That's all.
Cascadia Code. So that's interesting that it didn't go to the right one.
Right. It didn't go to the default.
Now let's see if that makes a difference. Okay. So I think that something is weird here. Wait, am I in the right? Yeah, I'm making sure I'm in the right Visual Studio here still, right? That I didn't swap it. So that's weird.
I'm going to take a look in my little app here.
Just out of curiosity. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because these demos, like the demo gods, are not loving me today. I'm just going to do this. By the way, I like this new sort of start screen, whatever you call that. I thought that was less stylish. Rebel Zoo says Mono does not have ligatures, so thank you for that information. So why did it go to Mono and not the new one though? When I switched it to the new one, something is weird. Unless Cascadia Code default show settings for text editor. I don't know. Am I doing something wrong here? I think this is right. This is really weird. What if I'm going to switch it to something else. Like it should be the same, just extra, just light. See if it picks it up somehow. And oof, boy, I don't like that light font, but this is weird.
So here's the thing.
So I don't know
Here's something I'm wondering, and I'm just going to read this. You know, if you've read a lot of blogs over the years that announce things, the next version of Visual Studio will include Cascadia Code, a new fixed width font for better readability and ligature support. If you like, you can try Cascadia Code today. It makes me wonder if it's just not in the preview.
Okay. But interestingly, when I chose Cascadia Code, purposefully, it did not give me the ligatures. And I like ligatures, which, by the way, is what I had when I had, let's just switch back to my...
Which, to be clear,
I like Fear Code.
For folks that maybe are asking, this is the support that we've seen. It's grown in popularity in different IDEs, different environments, where your font has some special support in it, so that if you do something like a double equals, which is a very common equality test in many different languages, that instead of you seeing two equal signs, they get combined together, so it looks like one very wide equal sign, right? And so, you know,
sort of like this, right?
Yeah.
So that is a ligature.
Right.
The two of them, there's actually, I'm gonna zoom in. I don't know why I can't scroll zoom to zoom in either, which is kind of weird. But if you notice, when I put my cursor here, I'm going to move my cursor along here, right? You guys can see that, I hope. I can actually break in between. Those are two different characters, but they're just spaced. When you don't put a space between them, it puts them together, right? You can even do things like, and this won't make a whole lot of sense for a string, but you can even say like greater than or less than equals, right? And see what it does. It creates this, this interesting character,
the way
I happen to really like.
The way it kind of looked when we were taught how to do greater than or equals in school, right? With the sign underneath. I'm sorry, the
as
line
opposed to looking like
the two character look.
Equals.
Yeah, you know, another popular thing is arrow functions. Like you were starting to show there, an arrow function, very popular.
And it looks more like an arrow, you know, in these kind of things. Now, why is it not working? I don't know why it's not working, but we're talking about all preview stuff here. Nothing we can get upset about. Maybe I should report it an issue or something like that. I don't know, but we're just taking like first looks at stuff tonight and having some fun. And so I'm not, you know, terribly upset about the thing. I just, you know, feel a little odd that the demo didn't kind of work, but you know, whatever. It's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that support come to development and coding. You know, ligatures are nothing new. Font designers have had the ability for forever to basically code into their fonts little extra spacing when two characters are being used together. And the reason for that is because when you develop a font, you know, you develop a font and you're putting your heart and soul into it, and you have spacing around your letters, and then it just so happens, just because of the way the I and the R look, I'm just picking on two letters, that it looks like there's a Grand Canyon between them. So what ligatures have always been a way for font developers to say like, but if it's an I next to an R, then I actually want you to display them this way so that they look more natural. And you take that support and you add it to programming, and you say, if it's an equal sign followed by a greater than sign, well, then you're doing a lambda or an arrow function. So why don't we make it look like an arrow? And that's interesting stuff. I've actually heard, and I'm not trying to start arguments here, but I've heard the flip side. I've heard some people say that from an accessibility standpoint, they preferred not using them, especially when like mentoring new developers who would be like, well, what are you doing and why? And it's a little confusing. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree that it's not for everybody. But, you know, that's what's great about the fact that there's a big
settings
dialogue here where I can say,
yeah, you can like change the world.
I want to change what I'm doing, and you don't have to like it. I mean, I can change it to be red. Everything is red, you know, and have underlines if I want. I mean, I guess I could probably do that, you know, like I can do what I want to do. And so it's not for everybody. I feel like we forgot one of the most important things, because I personally, I kind of want to start to wrap up the show a little bit here, but I took a screenshot of this because my scroll is not working here. But what I want to do is that. I guess I should have just done this. Right?
Oh, yeah. 64-bit
one of the
IDE.
biggest things about 2022 is that that Visual Studio is now 64-bit. And that's a pretty big deal. I imagine it was, I don't know, maybe it was a lot of work to get that done. So I think the first thing that, we want to say, like, I think the disclaimer that goes along with the 64-bit is that doesn't mean you can't make 32-bit applications with Visual Studio, right? It just means that Visual Studio itself is 64-bit now, right?
Yep.
And what that gains you is memory, right? You're no longer locked into what I think it's like 4 gigs that Visual Studio had access to of memory, and now you can do much more. And there's this great demo. I wonder if it's you know what? It might even be on one of these pages here. This might even be the demo. Let me see if this works. There's a demo that shows. I'm just going to play this. It might not work really well in here, but there's a demo that shows Visual Studio opening. I think this is it. Yeah, this is. I don't know if this is going to render really well. Probably it was terribly because it was showing a video.
Well, it showed some 1,600 projects in the solution or something like that.
Yeah, 1,600 projects. There's another version of this thing that you can see where they have 2 Visual Studios side by side, 2019, 2022, opening a 1,600 project, 300, whatever it was, like 300 files or, it was a lot of stuff. And 2022 opens like we just saw. And the other one just crawls. And I don't know if they even finish it in the video, but it looks like it's going to take minutes of time, right? And so for people that work on really big solutions, this is a big deal. Now, I don't know, Chris, I don't know if you've read anything about, again, not to put you on the spot because we didn't discuss this in advance, but if I'm working on like a air quotes here or, regular Visual Studio application, right? I've got a couple of projects, I've got a lot of files, but it's not 1,600 projects, right? Does that help me on a daily basis, or does it really only help when they've exceeded a certain size? I don't know the answer to that question.
So
I don't know if you know the answer.
A while ago, there was someone who, this debate has raged for at least a decade about why isn't Visual Studio 64-bit, especially when the OS went 64-bit. And there's been responses in the past about what it means. I think what eventually has happened, besides the fact that it was probably a long haul to change all of this, is that we finally got to a point where most developers probably have this abundance. We're probably to the point where most developers have, dare I say, 32 gigs in their machines, maybe?
I don't.
So in the past, it was one of the reasons why it was a tough call to make this change is that you go and make this change and 64-bit pointers and memory addresses essentially doubles like the size of everything. And what if you still have a 4 gig machine? Like, are we just gonna run out of memory faster? So I
that's interesting. I never thought about that. You could run out of memory faster on a different memory.
Well, allocated
right.
memory, to be fair.
Yeah. They want to take advantage of the fact that, like, I have 16 gig, which is still a fair amount, but they want to be able to take advantage of that memory, right? And they don't have that limitation with the 64-bit. Now, again, I don't know how much of a difference that will make during a like sort of typical debug session. Will it help or not help? But I think it's going to help certainly under certain circumstances, right? When you're working on big projects.
Yeah, so it's a famous blog post. You know how some blog posts in this world are like internet famous? And it's Rico Mariani, who used to work for Microsoft and wrote a blog post in June of 2009, where he said, from time to time, our customers ask me about our plans to create a 64-bit version of Visual Studio. When is it coming? Why aren't we making it a priority? And to just to not read the whole article to you, he goes on and gives the reason.
Found it.
Yeah, he goes on and talks about why. And he says, you won't see a benefit unless you have a scenario that doesn't fit into 4 gigs. And I would imagine in 2009, they didn't see that scenario very much. And quite frankly, it was probably a massive rewrite of a large part of the of Visual Studio. And if you've been following Visual Studio the last couple of releases, if you've noticed one thing about it, they have been working extremely hard to move more and more of Visual Studio out of process. And one of the side benefits of that is the install experience that you're getting, where instead of the old days of like, oh, we're installing so much stuff, they've moved so much stuff out of process and out of like the main package, if I can use that terminology, which isn't really correct, I'm sure, that you can just click the workloads you need and they just start up, and extensions run out of process so that way Visual Studio itself can shut them down without it bringing down the whole IDE. And I think it was a long road to get to a place where they could flip this switch. And I don't want to make it sound like it was just a switch that flipped. I'm sure there was a lot more work after that. But I think it was probably a decade's worth of work to get to where they said, hey, we could realistically do this now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm sure it was a big effort, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have, and so the thing is about that out of process stuff is if we move some of these workloads out of process, that means each one of those process then I guess would have the same, like let's say it was 32-bit, right? Not 64-bit. Each process would have the same limitation, meaning that by moving things out of process, we already got more memory. Does that sound right? But now we have even more because none of the processes are limited.
Well, it certainly helped. I think it certainly helped the Visual Studio stability and ability to start up by basically moving closer and closer to where more of it is a shell, and that's. But I don't think Look, I am no expert at the internals of Visual Studio. But I can say that I have definitely noticed over the last couple generations of the product that there were certain pain points that used to bring the whole thing to just like spinning circle of patience that just went away. Like they just stopped. Or now, instead of it being a spinning circle of patience, you might even get a little notice that says like, hey, you know what? This extension is really slow. Do you want to disable it? And then I would disable it, and that would be the last, and then it'd be, well, problem solved, right? Which isn't the best news for the extension writer, but it's funny. I don't know what to make of this news from a technical perspective. It's not because I think it's bad news or poor news or meaningless. It's just when you try to explain its importance to someone, what do you say more than like, well, 64-bit addressing of memory, that's a lot of memory. I'm personally not sure what else to say, and that's to point out that I'm not minimizing this at all. It's a big deal.
No, I hear you. We put this show together, and we're not experts on this. I mean, some of this we wanted to have it be a bit of a first look, even for us. That's why I was trying some of these things for the first time, and unfortunately, we had a couple of issues with that. But sorry, what just happened here? We're just kind of winging it through some of these things, and hopefully this is interesting to people. And if it is interesting, and you like the conversation and the kind of things we do, like our videos, subscribe, follow us on Twitch,
right?
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, right, Chris? I mean, that's the way you can give us some support. I would go a step further too and say, like, help us promote the show, right? Those of you that are here a lot and like when we have conversations, in the chat, and we love when people chat. Some of our shows are really busy, chatty, and some of them are quiet. And that's okay. But if you like that kind of stuff, and you see us tweet that there's a show coming up, retweet it for us if you don't mind, right? Because that's only going to help the show grow and have more audience and more people participating. And I hope you don't mind my asking you that as a favor, but if you could, and some of our viewers do already retweet us and things like that, help us spread the news and help us grow the show. Right. And we've got some new ideas for some things that we might try coming up soon. I don't even mean show topics, but we've got some format ideas that we might try out. We're always interested in trying new things, and we love to hear what you guys like about the show, so we can keep doing that for you and keep bringing you guys, more content.
Yep. So you're watching live on Twitch. The replays are at youtube.com/thedevtalkshow, right? And if you're watching on YouTube, then you can join us live on twitch.tv/thedevtalkshow Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So check to see when that is in your time zone next Wednesday. So
next Wednesday, who knows when that is in your time zone, right?
Yeah.
Probably the same time as it is this week. We don't have daylight savings or any of those weird things.
That's not changing for a little while, at least. Yeah. So Andy, this was great, and thanks for having those blog posts together. Do you have a one tab link we can put in the Twitch chat?
Yeah. Right. I was just remembering that. So I don't know if you don't see my screen anymore, but I'm going to hit the one tab button. Right.
Yep.
And when I do that, it gives me this crazy link of a tab. Let's see right. And so what is the part that I want to grab?
You click share as web page on the right.
Oh, share as web page.
Now you'll get a link.
That's what I wanted. Okay. Yep. I wasn't quite familiar with that. Right. And if you're watching right now, by the way, click this, scan this QR code, which I think will probably work over video, and you don't need to worry about this, but I'm going to take this, right? And we're going to put that in the comments.
Yep. And we'll get it into the YouTube comments as well.
YouTube. I'm going to do this so I don't forget. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm going to put, that's what I meant. But I think what you're saying is I should put it here.
Oh, yeah. Let's get it for the folks watching on Twitch.
Yeah. And there's the tab. So if you want to take a look at, I didn't talk about this one link I had in here. This is from InfoWorld, which I might be behind a paywall. But I thought it did a good job of sort of summarizing several of these previews. I didn't really talk about it much because we focused on 4 and 5 and we use those. But yeah, these are all the links we talked about. We went through. Chris turned us on to this great one tab utility, which is really cool. Another thing, I did grab this link. We didn't talk about it, but breaking changes in .NET 6. Always good to know what's breaking and what kind of problems you might have. While we didn't go through it tonight, feel free to review that on your own if you'd like. And there's a couple other links that we shared, and even the last one by Rico Mariani. I threw that in there. Why is there no 64-bit version yet? And that's it. Chris, you got anything else for tonight's show?
No, I think that was great. And thanks for showing us IntelliCode. And I'm glad that we got a very, very minimal sample of Hot Reload working, and got to talk a little bit about what's new in the C# language a little bit, in the platform. Maybe not C# language. That probably wasn't fair. That's new in the Link platform. There's a lot here. Like just looking at what's new in ASP.NET Core, what's new in C# 10. Right. Sounds like those are future shows, right?
All the Maui stuff, which we've talked about, but there's more to Maui, I think, as it progresses. You're right. There's future shows. We are not running out of content. We might not always have the idea off the top of our head of what we're going to do for the next show, but there's not really a shortage of content, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
So I think what's going to happen next is that Rich, Chris, and myself are going to get together and brainstorm for what we will be doing on next week's show. We have not yet figured it out, but we will. If you have any ideas, send it to us. Chops says, thanks for the stream, guys. Thank you, Chops, for being a part of it. Thanks for everybody that was here with us tonight. We had a good time. We all learned a little something. I hope you guys did too.
Yep.
And thanks to Chris for doing all the heavy lifting and keeping that stream running. A nice smooth start to the show today, by the way. We're getting there, right? That was good. So for Chris and for Rich, who's not here with us tonight, but always here in our hearts, and I'm sure he'll be back with us next week. So for Chris, Rich, and myself, I'll say see you next week on the Dev Talk Show.